2010, I was originally diagnosed with MDS, which is myelodysplastic disorder. It's a form of pre-leukemia. I had a bone marrow transplant in May 2012. Unfortunately, it didn't actually take, so I had to have a secondary one in the November of 2012. That fantastically took, and the Royal were absolutely wonderful. Dr. Salim's team were fantastic. I got about 8 years remission, and unfortunately, just under 2 years ago now, I found a lump in my breast and was referred to Clatterbridge on the Wirral, where they took a biopsy, which unfortunately hematomed, and they didn't get any biopsy results from it. As a result of that, it took us about 2 months to get the hematoma to resolve. They took a further biopsy, and the results came back in the mid-August that it was rare, but it was a myeloid sarcoma. Unfortunately, I'd gone from having 1 lump to having 6 or 7 at that point throughout my lymph node as well. I had a course of CPX chemotherapy, which unfortunately didn't do anything to resolve it, so I then had surgery under Miss Mitchell at the Royal and then had radiotherapy. I unfortunately relapsed with the disorder back in my bone marrow by June, which is what we've been dealing with since. So I've had some different types of chemotherapy to sort of combat that, and I'm looking forward to my, maybe looking forward is a bit of a strong word, but I'm looking forward to my third bone marrow transplant due to join Ward 5. So that was sort of a basic history of how I got to this point. So obviously I've been transferred from the Royal, where I had an awful lot of my care, over to the Clatterbridge, which is a fantastic building, and I can say that the staff have been lovely. The team that I'm under now are fantastic. I would say maybe the organisation and the communication within the hospital probably needs a bit of work. There have been several times where people don't really know what's going on with my care, or my consultant hasn't actually been aware that I've been in hospital or that I've had treatments or had problems or anything like that. So it's more sort of keeping them in the loop about things and making sure that things are fed back to the patients effectively. Another thing that I would also focus on is the food within the hospital. It seems to be an ongoing thing on Ward 4. They have a chemotherapy club, which is sort of a group of us that are all going to chemo at the same time or what have you, and we text to see how everyone's doing. We have a bit of a WhatsApp group, and it seems to be an ongoing issue with the food, and realistically it's not appetising when you're not well. It's not appetising if you are well, so trying to convince someone to start eating again when their mouth is particularly sore, it's not necessarily just about soft foods, it's about foods that actually people want to eat. A lot of people said that realistically being able to see vegetables with colour and a bit more sort of variety on the vegetable front doesn't have to necessarily be sauces, but people were like, oh, broccoli and green veg, stuff like that we're told actually really helps us. Yeah, you can't get hold of at all. So I would say the food is sort of a major issue for quite a lot of patients. So after you've had treatment, you are reliant on coming into daycare, which is your level 1, I think it's Glasgow ward, and I know there's been a lot of upheaval on that ward, that sort of thing, and I know the nurses, they are trying their best to fit everything in, but they obviously need more support than they're currently getting. I don't think that I've been a patient with them for over 18 months now, and I can count on one hand how many times I've been taken in with, half an hour of my appointment time. Every single time that I go, I can guarantee that they are running at least an hour late. Even if you book the first slot in the morning, the organisation for them just isn't there. They seem to constantly be struggling with stock in the trolleys, not having what they actually need just to do basic functions like taking blood, that sort of thing. They seem to be missing dressings or missing steri patches and stuff like that, and it just all sort of drags out the visits. And when you don't feel like you've got that much of a quality of life, that can be a really, really difficult thing to try and take, because if you're there 3 times a week, the rest of the time you are knackered. If you've spent all day in daycare, you are exhausted. You don't have time to fit other things in, so the hospital becomes your entire life, and it makes you quite bitter when you are there for 8 hours when your treatment only took 2.5 half. I would say probably one of the biggest factors for me in terms of getting through my treatment has been the support of my family, and I think that is one of the biggest things that you fear going. Well, it was certainly the biggest fear for me when I was going in there. I obviously knew how dangerous the treatment I was having was, and it was terrifying to think that as a haematology patient, the majority of your chemo stay is neutropenic, which means that you can get an infection at any time, and when you get those infections or you hemorrhage or anything like that, you don't have the means to be able to contact your family effectively. The difference that it could make allowing a visitor in to see that you're okay the following day to try and lift your spirits, anything, but I can't see. I still personally really struggle with the idea of being isolated when you are going through something that is going to be one of the worst points in your life. It's very, very difficult to hear staff talking about how they went out, or they had a holiday, or they got married, or they had a party with their friends the night before they're treating you, when you're told that you can't have your mum in to see you or anyone that's close to you, because at the end of the day, even you can try and do things as much over the phone as you like, but it's still not the same as having someone there to hold your hand. And I think for an awful lot of patients, it is, you could say it's the fear of the unknown, it's the fear of what infection you might get, how bad it might be, but having had some truly awful infections, I'm pretty much in the been there, done it category, and I can still tell you that from the other side, it is still terrifying to think that that could happen again, and that they wouldn't be able to see me. To know that the last time that you saw your family could have been 6 weeks ago is horrific. When you are left in a room for 24 hours a day just to think about what you're going through, that is torture. Yeah. So I think that covers sort of most aspects of the things that really bothered me about the hospital. It's a fantastic building, and the staff they are trying, but it just seems like the organisation, the actual communication between wards isn't there. You arrive at daycare, they've had no idea that you've been hospitalised. Nobody's checked your notes, nobody's updated anything, nobody knows what's going on with you, and I think that it can be quite hard to have to explain to several different. Every time you go, you have to explain to someone new where you're at within your treatment. I know I'm old hat at this now. I know what my treatments are, I know what my medications are and stuff like that, but for people that maybe have got a bit of brain fog down to the chemo or aren't quite as on the ball with what's happening with them, I'm not convinced that they will be getting the best quality of care unless someone is reading their notes, because they don't honestly know. I mean, even when I was in during chemo, a lot of the patients didn't know what type of chemotherapy they were having. They didn't know what it was called. They just knew that they were having chemo. So that must be quite difficult to sort of not really be able to explain where you're at within your treatment. Like, you couldn't rely on them to be able to say, oh, I'm having this and this, because they didn't know what type of chemo they were having. They didn't know their schedule for chemo. They just knew it was this week. They didn't actually know whether it was day 1, 3 and 5, because once you're an inpatient, you're there regardless. So maybe some sort of schedule that could go up on the wall for patients, in each of the rooms, even if they could write it on the whiteboard, so that people had an idea of what was going on with them. You can reiterate it to them in that way. I mean, even myself, I'm heading into transplant next week, and I still don't know what drugs I'm having on what days, because I haven't been given an actual schedule. So it'd be quite nice if they could put something like that in place. They could find some way to, try the things on the menu and tell me whether you'd eat them when you were sick. I mean, Macmillan have published so many books that you've got downstairs. There's a wealth of knowledge there as to how you can help yourself during cancer, and how certain things can boost your immune system, and they can help boost your neutrophils and that sort of thing. And yet the diet that's offered doesn't include them, and that doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me. So I think that's about it.